Here.
Dr. Hudson?
Here.
Dr. LeBay?
Here, and we establish a quorum.
We have.
Is there a motion from the board to approve tonight's agenda?
I make a motion we approve tonight's agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBay?
Yes. If everyone would please stand, our student board members, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on, in terms of reports on tonight's agenda is item 3.1, attendance report. Troy Brock, Director of People Personnel.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Excuse me. We'll be reporting to you this evening on our month one attendance, and that is going to include July 25th of this year and ending on August 30th. Includes a total of 15 instructional days, which that's obviously not a lot of instructional days, and that's just how month one falls. We've got a lot of professional development days, opening day, which includes only our teaching staff. So there's a limited number of days in there, but definitely not a limited amount of information that we can get from it. I do also want to point out that for 22-23, the state has discontinued the use of what we call the QRS code, which is the Quarantine Receiving Services code. That was used over COVID to allow for students who might have been either exposed or tested positive for COVID, and we had to send them home for that period of time. The state did allow us to use that QRS code in those places when students were absent, and then that way we could actually show them as actually not, or it should show them as being funded when we calculated that. Even though we weren't actually accumulating the ADA, we were kind of tracking that and following our traditional best practices and looking at that information. So this year, we don't have the QRS code. We are not using that this year. So when we're looking at these numbers and we compare them to this year versus last year, you can kind of see that without the aid of the QRS codes in place, we still have been very competitive this first month versus month one of last year. So looking at that, to begin with, looking at our enrollment, we started the year off with, looks like, I'm going to call them, sorry, 2,912 students. So a total overall of just an increase of 3. When you were talking about enrollment, I just want to remind our board, as well as anybody else who's interested about this, is when we're looking at an attendance month, it looks at our total number of enrollments in a given period of time, plus the number of re-enrollments we had during that time, and then subtract from that the number of withdrawals that we have. So it's not a simple enrollments versus withdrawals. So we do look at that count in that fashion. So it's not like on the last day of the month, this is how many kids we had enrolled. It's an actual math problem there. So, but it's figured the same way each year. So with 2,912, like I said, it was about where we were, the same as last year. Some changes that we have had from compared to last year is a decrease of 42 at McNabb, an increase of 19 at Morgan, and an increase of 29 at Clark. And what we have seen this year, I'm speculating at this point until I actually report this in next month's board meeting, is going to be the non-resident numbers. We do feel that we have had an increase in the number of non-residencies, but I will report more accurately and precisely on that, on what we have had previously, as well as what we're comparing it to this year. And so attendance-wise, excuse me again, I do want to congratulate and start with this year's traveling trophy as it goes around to the district each month. So excited for at 96.88% for month one, which is a very good standing for the start of the year. Not what we're traditionally used to, I will say that. In past years, we've been used to like 97 to 98%. So we're rebuilding. But I do want to congratulate Clark for having 96.88%. So good job. Yeah, give him a hand. All the other schools are like, no, don't give him a hand. So the gauntlet's been thrown down, y'all. Here you go. I do want to point out, and I also want to congratulate Choices this month for having 94.15% attendance. Typically, first month of the year is around the mid-80s. So what they've accomplished this year is to be commended, and we congratulate them also. And so, Mr. Steve, great job there. And if you want to talk about incentives for or some some rewards for the students for this past month, I'd certainly love to do that. I know Tillman High School had their high attendance also for High Attendance Day, and we're celebrating with the students there for High Attendance Day that was earlier this month. Also, looking at the other schools, Tillman had the second highest attendance for the month with 95.17%. Morgan with 95.13, so they were in a tight battle right there for second. Paducah Middle at 94.96 and McNabb at 95.59. So overall, our attendance was for the month 95.41%, which is a 0.17 increase from last year. Now, again, like you take that into account for all those QRS codes we had at the beginning of the school year for month one, that's a great offset. Is that without the supports of those attendance codes, our students were still showing up, and we're very proud that they've been coming regularly. ADA, which is our funding. We haven't talked about our average daily attendance in a while, just because over these past couple of years with COVID, those fundings have been taken care of by looking at previous years or supplanting previous years into those years. This year, the state has approved $4,100 in base seat per student. And so, and the other thing is different, and I apologize, this report is off a little bit, is the half funding kindergarten. I should have removed that because that is full day funding, thank goodness. So so I was very proud to say that, we can take that half day funding off of there. So what you see there at 2751.55, all you have to subtract from that is the non-contract students, and that's 2.8 ADA. Those are students who do not reside in the state. They typically live in Illinois, but they are children of district employees, and I know the board last year approved and made a policy that permitted our district employees from out of state to be able to bring their kids over. However, we don't get funding for those students to be with us. So we take that sacrifice, but it's only a 2.8 ADA right there, and so the total for the month is 2748.75. So when you compare that to 2621 previous year, that's quite an increase, and you can account all of that really being to that full day kindergarten that's being given to us by the state. So with that, I will also let you know that next month I will start with the graphs to also bring those up so we can start to look at the trend data, and hopefully even have some comparison lines in that as well, some comparison graphs to see how we did versus the previous year. So with that, do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Brock?
Sir?
Are you going to address this?
That was the enrollment numbers, and so what I want to do is I do want to address that in our next month's meeting when we start to look at the trend information.
Any other questions from the board? Student board members? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item on our agenda is 3.2, Student Achievement Global Act. Assistant Superintendent twice.
Okay, good evening. Just want to provide an overview of our new accountability system that is starting, that is about to become public in about a month. But I wanted to make you aware of the components of the new system. That, this system has actually been in the works since 2020. And all through COVID, there's been planning by the state for this system. And it started actually with Senate Bill 158 that was passed in 2020, and that made significant changes in the statewide accountability system. And actually, the previous accountability system was actually only in place for 1 year. And before that was the unbridled learning system that we had. So this system hopefully will be in place for the next at least 5 years. Again, there are significant changes. The first change is that the system will use indicators that were explicitly listed in Senate Bill 158. Some of those are familiar: reading, math, science, social studies, and writing. There is a new emphasis on English language proficiency. Also, school climate and safety has a new emphasis. And then post-secondary readiness, which is the old college and career readiness, slightly redefined, and then graduation rate. So for this year, there are normally going to be two components of two categories of state indicators. But for this year, we're only going to have this first category, which is called status. And that basically is, how did kids perform on the tests this year, or on the indicators in the past school year. So eventually, starting in 2023, we will also have another set of indicators based on what's called change. And change is essentially a growth measure to see how did we do compared to the previous year. So for this year only, because it's the first year of the system, we will only have status scores, and our whole accountability number will be based on that. But starting next year, you will have both current year as well as a comparison of how we've grown from the previous year to the current year. So this table shows you the weighting of the overall system, and one of the big changes is that they've combined a lot of the testing scores into just two categories. You can see reading and math occupying the largest proportion, and then, or at least at elementary and middle it does, and then also science, social studies, and writing occupying a really large component. You can see the large majority of the scores come from those subjects. In high school, there's also an emphasis on post-secondary readiness, and that is because, well, it's important that students be prepared for college and career. And that's why it occupies 20% of the high school score. You can see one other change is that the graduation rate weighting actually went down. It used to be about 20% of the score, and it's been reduced. The last change, the major change that has occurred through this new accountability system is that the overall ratings will be on a color system. If you remember, for 1 year we had a star system. Before that, we had a label that was given to the districts based on back in when I first came. But this system actually comes out, it's kind of copied from California. And that's a good thing. I think, it's a working system that they can see, in practice, that they adopted and also adapted to Kentucky. And so this will be the color rating scale that we will be using. This will be used for overall performance of schools, as well as a color system to rate individual subject performance. So for the reading and math indicator, you will have a rating. For social studies and science, you'll have a rating, and so on. On the school report card, it will be, the indicators will be displayed kind of like a car dashboard, where you can see, kind of a gauge icon showing, where we land on each of the areas in color. And so that's essentially the very basics. If you want to get deeper into it, I provided on the back page a more detailed explanation of each one of the categories. I will note that post-secondary readiness does include some pretty big changes, both in terms of careers and in terms of the academic readiness part of it. And we're still digging into some of the cool options that they offer for career readiness. They're offering more work experience, readiness opportunities for kids. And that's going to be good. That means that we can connect kids with industry and actually have them go out in the field and become career ready that way, in addition to just passing an industry certification. So, any questions?
Other questions from the board? The graduation rate says 4 and 5 year cohort accounts for 6%. Is that graduating how many 4 years or 5 years?
Yes, and I might just speak a little bit about that. So there are two different graduation rates that we historically have received. The first is 4-year graduation, and the second is 5-year. So what they've done over the past few years is they've actually averaged those two rates and generated our accountability score from that average. Okay, so, but what does that actually mean when we say 4-year graduation rate? What they do is they take every freshman that comes into Tillman, and they add to it any kid who moves in to Tillman from another school during those 4 years, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. And then they subtract any student who has a valid transfer out of Tillman. And then they compare basically that number to the kids who actually graduate. And so what's a little bit different in this accountability model is that if a student moves in just for one day, in other words, they move into Tillman and then they leave and maybe go to another city, Tillman is accountable for that student. Even, they're accountable to that student unless the student actually goes to another high school and enrolls. So this is one of our biggest challenges with graduation rates. Sometimes we have families who maybe they're experiencing homelessness, or maybe they have a family emergency and they leave school overnight, and they may move away. I mean, they may move to another city, or they may go somewhere, and when they go to that city, they don't re-enroll in a high school. We are accountable for that. So in other words, if we cannot locate them and get them to enroll, and if they don't enroll, they are considered, for us, for accountability, they're considered a dropout. I think that's good that we're accountable because they're with us. It can be very difficult sometimes with our resources to be able to locate a child who's left town, who is no longer here. So I thought I would mention that there's a lot to that accountability rate in terms of the rules because of the mobility that we have, where kids move sometimes in and out of our district at a little bit higher rate. So, but yeah, so it's again, I think it's a good thing that we're accountable. I just think that it can get a little bit complicated given the situation. So.
One other question. The board members have questions also. Do you have any flexibility, and you may still be digging into this, on what tests are used, or is this all state readiness tests? I mean, we've had some in the past for career readiness, college readiness.
Yeah.
You've had some flexibility through any of this at younger or older levels. Is there flexibility?
We only have flexibility with post-secondary readiness. Everything else is mandated by the state. So, and I should mention that all of these tests are new, except for science. Every other test has been actually redesigned. Science is actually getting revised this year, so we'll probably have a new science test. So actually, for reading, math, social studies, and writing, it was the first time that we had seen the operational test this year, or this past year, in the spring. For post-secondary readiness, they actually have given us more flexibility, which is really helpful because now we can align ourselves with WKCTC, and the same exams they use to determine readiness, we now can use, which we weren't able to do that before. There were very strict rules on which exams we could use. Now we have a little more flexibility, so we can show, that way we can be, again, more aligned with, what Kentucky schools often do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on our agenda is item 3.3, Paducah Head Start report from Christy Lewis, Head Start Director.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm excited to share that preschool is in full swing, and we are up 47 students from last year. So last year, our parents were still worried about sending the preschoolers to school, so we only had 186 when we ended the year, but now we're up to 233. And after fall break, we've got 10 more students that we will be enrolling. So we will be fully enrolled for Head Start, and we'll continue our state-funded enrollment. So I have no worries that we will be back up to our 260, 270 by the end of the school year. I'm also anxious and ready for our advanced readiness data to come back, so I can report to you on the students that we had last year and how they've transitioned to elementary school. Our new children's service manager, Ms. April Throgmorton, has reached out to all the elementary school principals to sit down and have a conversation with them on what skills are our students missing, what skills do they have, what can we do better to help prepare them. One of the new things we did this year was to have our in-person preschool orientation again. From that in-person orientation, we were very shocked and kind of taken back. We had 52 mental health referrals from our families. Those mental health referrals were for their parents, for their students, and so for all of those families, our licensed mental health therapist has gone in the classroom and did an hour-long observation on each child, had a phone conversation with each family, and assisted them either with resources in our building or outside of our building. Some of those topics that our families are dealing with range from homelessness, anxiety, depression, grief, and just dealing with temper tantrums from their children. One new program that we're offering this year after fall break is called Dinosaur School. Dinosaur School is a research-based mental health coping small group strategy, and we'll be working with a targeted group of those 52 referrals on identifying feelings and helping interact with each other. Four Rivers is already implementing this in a summer program, and so our licensed mental health therapist, she was trained last year and has come back and completed her certification to be able to do that for us. So when she finishes, we'll have a total of 40 students who've been able to go through this program. Hopefully, that'll support positive behavior in the classroom. One other thing I wanted to share about what we're doing at Head Start is we have a couple staff members who are going to the district, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee meetings. We have taken that and now we have a school-wide DEIB committee. And this month, our leadership team is looking at when families come into our building, how does our building reflect our students that we serve? And then from that, how do our families feel when they come into the building? So I put out what I called my undercover boss agents, and we've got families who are coming in, and we don't know who those families are. And we just want to know from the families, are you greeted? Do you feel welcome? When you come to the front door, we follow the procedures we say we're going to follow. So I tasked one of our family advocates with sitting down and picking those families. And then she will report at our next meeting at the end of this month on how they feel, what's going on, and what can we do better. Because I said I need to start that at the beginning of the year, not at the end. So I really appreciate, we have a teaching assistant, Kirsten Patterson, who is taking the lead in our building as that DEIB leader. So she'll be presenting at our upcoming district-wide committee, and so she's kind of helping us lead the way now. And in our building, we'll be also working with Ms. Burris on Hispanic Heritage Month. So Kirsten has taken the lead on decorating our building and doing some different things for our families. So we're encouraged by that and ready for fall break. Any questions?
Questions from the board? So you have what's your enrollment going to be this year when you get up to full?
We can, in the building that we're currently in, we can have 270, and that will be every single slot full.
And then next year you'll have room for 320?
320, full day. So now we have a mixture of half day and full day. And I mean, it's hard on our families when they're having to choose what do they do on the other half of the day. It's hard getting through childcare processes, and so sometimes they're telling their employers they can only work half a day, that's definitely a hardship for them.
So in 320 will be 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds?
Yes, sir.
Will it be half and half, or 2/3 4-year-olds, 1/3 3-year-olds, or?
We have a enrollment process, and so 4-year-olds always are a priority. Because we're a blended program with the state, every 4-year-old that is eligible must be in a classroom setting. So if a 4-year-old came in and every classroom was maxed at 20, we have to open a new classroom for that one child, and we get more to come in as well. So it's usually about half and half.
And then what's the teacher recruitment like to meet that extra
So the
demand next year? And
The
how's
teacher
that?
recruitment is high, the teacher applicants are low. And so when we look out at teacher applicants, we had a job posted a few weeks ago, and we only had 2 applicants for the instructional assistant position. Out of those 2, only 1 was qualified that we could hire right then. So for the teachers, it's the same. I've contacted Murray State just to get a feel on what the applicant pool looks like, and it's still not that high either. So we will definitely be going out. But the good thing is, I know that we have preschool teachers, and that pathway towards working on apprenticeship and getting in-house experience, hopefully we'll have people in this room that come back and teach at Paducah Head Start one day. I'm not giving up. We have to go out and recruit.
I got a question, not necessarily for you, but that is a concern when we start hearing the different reports about people leaving the profession. Are we talking more as far as what will be Plan B?
Yes, sir. The vision for several years ago for our early childhood development pathway that was not, Tolman had stopped making that an emphasis. And so that early childhood development pathway came back, I believe, 3 years ago. So then students get 1 year, then they go to the second, now they're in the third. And so with that, I'm at Paducah Middle School tomorrow talking about how we start a club for students at the middle school that want to become teachers. I had that same conversation with Ms. Steves last week at Paducah High School. We envision when the building is across the street, Otis Inning there, students that are certified will be able to go over at the end of the day, during the middle of the day, and help at Head Start, just like we do with our students in our nursing program that walk across the street to Baptist. And so get a real world aspect with that. And then with that, we have not completely on a piece of paper, but the alignment is there relative to how we can transition from early childhood development certification in high school, use our local community scholarship to get a 2-year degree, and how you can transfer that to the Murray State into the campus. Doesn't mean you can't go straight to Murray or UK or U of L or wherever that would be, but building that pathway out so we know exactly for students, so they have a tangible piece of paper or something on the internet to, here are my next steps, so that they've got that compass. And I think that's a vital way to create a pipeline for us.
Yeah, I'm thinking about also just even now what teachers are eligible for retirement within the next 2 or 3 years. And I understand, starting in middle school and all that, but that's going to take a while. What's going to be the immediate?
So one of the things I do is I've got a succession plan for, this is how many teachers right now might be retiring in 5 years, because I realize that that 5 years with the behaviors of students in the classroom might be shrinking down, and they might be retiring a little sooner. So we do look at who's in our building, who do I need to find. One thing that Head Start really prides itself on is supporting our parents to go back into the workforce. So they might start out as an instructional assistant, and then we can help pay for their child development associate and them to go back to school. So as parents are engaged back in our building, I'm hoping that we'll find some shining stars that they want to go back to school and be a teacher. So I look at that from my standpoint on who's going to be retiring next, so that I can say, hey, not only do I need to hire new teachers, but I've got to replace this one. And who do I have in the building who wants to go back to school? Because Head Start does give us a little leeway to be able to hire a CDA employee while they're getting their teaching certificate.
See, while it's not a reality necessarily for us, I know that in Illinois, Kankakee, where I worked, they had to have teachers who were highly qualified for a discipline. And what I'm hearing on news is sometimes we're not getting that because of, and I'm just wondering, what are the things that we're going to be doing as a district? Because I think we're going to have to start looking at that soon. High school and middle school, I'm not sure if there's a large turnover versus elementary.
Yeah, there is, and we actually have a prospective teacher in the audience, not to embarrass anybody, but if you heard Mr. Black and I before the meeting, we're trying to recruit a math teacher, the student teaching with us, that's observed in the meeting tonight. So I think it's every one of those opportunities, any chance you get to put our school district. We have groups that go out to the recruitment fairs that are across buildings. We have teachers, and even I think Mr. Ebersol actually teaches classes for colleges within our district so that we're getting prospective teachers into our buildings. We have the, I'll mess the name up, but we have the
PD school.
Yeah, PD school model to where students, their senior year, start the school year with us. When they're a senior in college, they end the school year with us, and they do observations through student teaching, so they get that full school year. And that's a recruitment process. I think we've got that at Clark, we've got that at the middle. I think our principals have been very...
And Tillman too.
Yeah, in Tillman, excuse me, very intentional about reaching out for college students to come in and do observations, just to start putting faces with future employees. And so I think there's different levels of that, but we are facing what you're talking about is a challenge. It's a shortage challenge that we're running into, not just in West Kentucky, but nationwide. So
we've also been proactively recruiting people out of other fields who are interested in a change, which COVID has produced more of those types of applicants. So we are recruiting people for alternate certification, especially in middle and high school. And that has actually produced some pretty big gains. They walk in not, without as much experience and knowledge, but they immediately go into school and they're taking courses while they teach, as you know. I know you had that in Kankakee probably too, but that's actually been really, really helpful. And that's really helped us fill some gaps this year. So, and we've gotten some good recruits that way too.
I'd also like to add, I'm working with Donna Ware from Murray State University, and we're working on growing our own, and we're not just focusing on seniors that are getting ready to graduate. We're sending her prospective freshman and sophomore students that have an interest in education and trying to get them earlier. And she's working with our school in Christian County. She's kind of taking us in. And she does a lot of the student teacher placement and practicum teacher placement and has tons of experience. So we're working to get her some kids that she can be a mentor to and help get into her program earlier as well. And we're, like he said, with the alt-serve, we're having some really good success with that. We are really thinking out of the box and making sure that the needs are met in all the areas that we have any problems. And I'm trying to look ahead and say, okay, I see that this teacher is going to be retiring here. I'm going to need this. So it's really a strategic plan that I'm working with my assistants to ensure that we're not going to be 10 teachers short in 1 year or something like that. It's something I take very, very seriously.
And have we started connecting with Louisville, SIU, Carbondale, and UK just to see what their education departments look like?
We do that with Murray, and we do it with more, intentionally with Western, Murray, and those, but we absolutely can do Louisville and UK as well as, SIU, Tennessee State. I mean, there's a number of universities around us. It's a little bit challenging for a teacher to come in with an Illinois certificate with no experience, but it can be done. They just have to, they have to take some extra tests and a few things, which we've even been known to pay for the tests, if we need it.
Dr. Hudson, Dr. Shively mentioned about, I teach a class at Murray State, but there are actually 5 of us that are teachers in the district who are adjunct professors for Murray in the education undergraduate program. So we get a really good look at those students coming through and really focus on recruiting the ones that would be a great fit for us. We also have all of our students do practicum hours in all of our schools, and then also place the PDS students. I know Mr. Dietrich has one of my former students from last semester who will be with him for the entire year. So we've been very successful in doing that. But of course, one of our biggest challenges, and it's through the whole education department at Murray, is recruiting minority teachers. I have one minority student in my undergraduate class this year. And I think that's a focus that Murray State is working on as well. But we're able to really recruit some great candidates out of that undergraduate program.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a report from our student board representatives, Corianne Brooks and Jada Reed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Jenna and I believe it was last week. Last week we toured the schools, the elementary schools, and Paducah Middle School, and we got to get a different insight of like how things is being ran at each school. So what we learned about right here is at Paducah Middle School, we met with 3 of the house leaders. They were fantastic, and we learned about the lunches. Many students are not a fan of the lunches, but we tried to brainstorm different ideas on solutions for those school lunches to make just make the school lunch better. And we talked about the favorite subjects for different students. A lot of students like writing and math, so a lot of students like that. So we talked about the conjoined classes at Paducah Middle School. Recently, the Paducah Middle School, they made all of the classes honors classes, and all of the house leaders that were in the room with us mentioned that they would like for it to go back as to what it was previously. They noted that some students that might learn a little slower, they might not progress as others, and some kids that might learn a little faster, they're learning a little slower, if that makes sense. So that's something that not many, but all of the house leaders had mentioned. We talked about specials. A lot of the kids like STEM. I believe at McNabb, Miss Byer.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Everyone loved Miss Byer class with all the growing the green and etc. We talked about the safety of schools, asking students if they felt safe at school. I hope this doesn't happen, but if there was a school shooter, did they feel as if they would be safe in the school? And everyone said yes, so that's a plus. So we learned about the consequences of each school, what administrators and teachers do in order to ensure that everyone has the equal amount of consequence, and etc. And that's a good. Many students said that they have the equal amount of consequences. We talked about the diversity of each classroom and at each school, and students definitely mentioned that they see a lot of diversity in each classroom. We talked about the extracurriculars. Big shout out to Clark. They have a plethora of activities to be involved in, and I feel like that's a really good thing to get students involved in, to get students to want to come to school, because not every student wants to come to school every day. And what brings them joy in school? What brings them joy in school? So a lot of students said that they like the school spirit, especially at Paducah Middle School with the house thing. And when we went to Paducah Middle School, as soon as we got in there, all we hear is R-E-V, R-E-V. I don't know what that is, but everyone was screaming their house things, and it was just really cool. Their favorite thing to do within the school is to be able to participate in extracurricular activities during the school day. For example, like choir and band. They don't have to stay after school for that. They can do it during the school day and just get time to decompress and have fun rather than just learning about core subjects. So overall, the school tours were amazing. All of the students that we met with were fantastic, and I hope to do it again soon.
Okay, after we discussed like what's their favorite things in school, we also asked what's things that could be improved, such as the first thing they said was more extracurricular activities. PMS, they suggested ESS for certain kids who would need more help outside of school, and they even suggested tutors, like kids as tutors. And another thing was, we asked them about homework and schoolwork, do they feel like they're being loaded with that? And each school said no, that it's given like a fair amount each day, and like they have teachers that will help them if they need help. And back to PMS, fair classes was another thing that they said could be improved, such as like Corian said, like there's certain kids who move slower, so the kids who are moving as habit faster, they feel like they're helping them and not getting the education that they need. And another thing was more interactions with the other schools, such as the elementary schools and like specifically the fifth graders, because when me and Corian were in fifth grade, like towards the end of the year we would go PMS. Yeah, and we had that pen pals where we talked to kids from other schools, and we got to know them before we went to middle school, so we were ready and knew what to expect once we got to middle school. And another thing was, after talking to Clark, they wanted to do things to help the community, small things, just as food can drives or stuff the bus, just small things that we brainstormed, and that was one of the things that they talked about. And
we met a lot of new friends at each of the schools. We have Clark right here on the right, and at the top left we have Paducah Middle, not Paducah Middle School, but McNabb. And at the bottom left we have McNabb.
We forgot to add in the Morgan Fisher, but there were some.
And we forgot Paducah Middle.
Yeah. These people were like very vital of our trip, and they just, like Clark, we got a tour. I went to Clark, but it was way different from what I remember.
I've never been inside of Clark.
Yeah, and I've never been to McNabb, so yeah, it was crazy.
I have this for questions, but I wanted to touch bases on the meeting that we had for the school-wide meeting for, what was it?
LGBTQIA plus PD for Paducah Middle and Paducah and Chelsea.
Yes, and we had a guest speaker for that, just speaking in regards to knowing the proper gender identity and the proper pronouns for each student. And that just goes along with our mission statement, knowing every student by name and need. I say this all the time, a lot of people may not agree with it, but it's very important to just respect students as if you would want to be respected. And I sat in on the site-based decision-making council for Paducah Tillman High School, and there is a newly created alliance group. It's called PT Alliance, but it's targeted to different allies that support the LGBTQIA plus community and members of that community. It was recently known as the Gender Sexuality Alliance Group, but I'm not exactly sure on why that was changed to PT Alliance. I believe that's all. Anyone have any questions?
Questions from the board?
I have a question, but not necessarily you can answer. Because of the concern of teachers, how much professional development is given for the differentiation of instruction?
We have done some in the beginning of school. Actually, we have some planned for Friday. And at middle school in particular, Mr. Ross and the other administrators and Ms. Humphrey are expecting teachers to have, an extension activity for every lesson. So he's also, and this has been a big push, our first push is to ensure that we are teaching at grade level. In other words, that every assignment, regardless of class, needs to be at or above grade level. And that's how we started the year, but the next step is to ensure that there is an extension activity with every lesson for those who've mastered whatever the objective is. And that's actually getting rolled out on Friday with Ms. Humphrey.
How many students did you meet with, all the schools combined?
At each school, there was representatives, and at Clark, it was 2, Morgan 2. It was 2 at each school, so it was 6. Wait, no, because it was 3 of me. It was 10. It was 10 students.
And how many at Paducah Board?
It was 3.
It was 3.
Great. And did these students, did they have any input from other students, or did they have any mechanism for that, or was this pretty much kind of their sense of what's going on in their school?
I would say a little bit of both, because considering they are house leaders, I assume that they go out and venture to learn about different students' outlooks on things. So I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, Mr. Ross. But I would say a little bit of both, with them considering that they are house leaders.
And you all going back, you'll tour back to them when's your next visit to each school?
So what the objective is for, this was their first initial meeting,
Yeah.
and so just kind of mirroring what they did last year. And so now that they have met one time, our goal is to those same students, and Coriana Jada will meet with Dr. Shively. And then once they all meet together, and whatever that consensus is, and then the goal is to have the students to go back, to have our junior board members go back into each of the schools to meet with the same students. And so that could be one of the objectives on there, is that as they are meeting with each of the students, those same students, or I think we discussed in our leadership meeting to maybe have rotating students. So that was deciding, rather than having so many students at one time, we asked that they limit to 2 students, and then with the possibility of changing each time that the junior board members are present. So the plan is to meet with Dr. Shively probably sometime next month, or this is already October. So in October, and then the students will go back out in November.
Excellent. Any questions from the board? Well, having fun?
It's been a roller ride.
And you're learning?
What did you say, sorry?
Yeah, and you're learning?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for hearing of individuals and groups. The item, typically we ask people to limit their comments to 2 minutes, and we typically don't address those comments at this time, but we'll be happy to meet with board members or with the superintendent later. We typically take oral communications from the audience regarding items on the agenda first, and then items not on the agenda second. We ask people to sign in at the back, and there's one person here to sign in. If there's others who miss the sign-in sheet and would want to sign in after this person speaks, you all can raise your hand and we'll add you to the list. So item 4.1, this is an opportunity for oral communications from the audience regarding items which are included on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on an item that is on tonight's agenda? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to item 4.2. This is an opportunity for oral communications from the audience regarding items which are not included on tonight's agenda. And Pastor Anthony Walton, his name is on this list. He's the only one that's on the list, so if somebody else wants to speak after him, we'll provide an opportunity for you to do so.
board members.
Good evening.
I had to write this down so I won't forget what I want to say. I couldn't do it just off the hip. Paducah Board, Paducah Public Schools, Board of Education. This scripture is for me. James 3:17 and 18. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. This is my solemn apology to the board. Many of you may be aware of my previous criminal and incarceration record. As a result of that experience, I've spent my 35 years of freedom fighting a system of injustice and racism, a system without mercy or concern for the families left behind. Blacks are 14% of America's population, yet almost 50% of the prison population. In my personal experience with our prison system, I've encountered black prisoners who have served 32, 34 to 38 years before being exonerated or before the courts realized they have been given illegal sentences. For some of the members of Christ Temple, like a lot of pastors, I am the only father they know. Therefore, as a father, it would be a common act of normality to come to the rescue of their child. I felt these members had been spiritually violated, unjustly judged, racially and mercilessly terminated. Therefore, I went in protective mode. However, my arguments, although valid, were extremely personal. And because of that, I allowed my personal emotions to override my pastoral integrity. I crossed boundaries I should not have crossed, all in the name of justice for all. I apologize to this board for the lines I crossed and the language used in expressing my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Wolf. I personally appreciate your willingness to come to the board and speak with us about issues you've been concerned about in the past, and I hope you feel the freedom to set up time and meetings with us to do that in the future as well. I appreciate you coming here today with your comments as well. Thank you.
I'd like to say something to Pastor Walton. When you are a pastor, you can't help but care about your people. And when they have an offense, you take on that offense as well. So we do understand, because at the end of the day, your heart was concerned for your people. And we got that. I got it.
Thank you, sir.
We got it too.
I'm just pastor to pastor.
Yeah, I got you. No one else has signed up. Is there anybody else in the audience tonight that would like to provide oral communication to the board regarding items that are not included on tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 5.0, consent agenda. Is there a motion from the board to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I make a motion that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, Madam Filling Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Cochi?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBear?
Yes. Item 6.1, working budget. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the working budget for the fiscal year 2022 and 2023. Is there a motion from the board to approve item 6.1?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 6.1.
I'll second.
Are there any questions from the board? It's been moved and seconded. No questions? Please call the roll.
Dr. Cochi?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBear?
Yes. Item 6.2, salary supplement. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the 2022-2023 salary supplement of $2,000 for certified audiologists and speech language pathologists per KRS 157.397. This will be effective July 1st of 2022 for all 5 districts' speech language pathologists. KDE reimburses the district each fiscal year. Is there a motion to approve this salary supplement?
I'll make a motion to approve item 6.2, salary supplement.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Item 6.3, amendment to board policy, first reading. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education receive for first reading the amendment to board policy 09.4341. This revision is to define a student who is not on track to graduate for the purpose of seeking eligibility to obtain a high school equivalency diploma. Is there a motion from the board to approve item 6.3?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 6.3.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board?
Do you want to explain this?
Yeah, Mr. Brockowitz, do you mind you leading charge on this? Pretty
No, not a problem at all. Under the legislature this year, KRS was passed where boards are required to define when is a student not on track to graduate. Initially, when that guidance came out from the Kentucky School Board Association, the board just went ahead and approved the update, which included that original not on track to graduate definition. Since then, in looking at it, we've also asked guidance counselors and other school administrators to look at this and say, how do we really need to define this for Paducah schools? The original ASBA recommended language didn't truly fit what works best for our students, and trying to not incentivize students to go get their GEDs, but more to looking at this as this is a final option. This is an opportunity for somebody who 17 years of age by law, that's what's in the statute, but also looking at they are significantly behind. They're not going to be on track to graduate by the time their cohort goes through and crosses the line. And so that's why this language is coming here today, is to really laser focus our definition and make sure that we don't incentivize students at Tillman then to seek out a GED.
Any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Item 6.4, payments to contractors, BG 20-236. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the following payments for the Head Start preschool project. Summary payment number 8, $1,018,759.94. Bacon Farmer Workman Engineering, $5,939.25, and $6,592.76. Game Time, $250,000 and $216,475 for playground. Is there a motion to approve item 6.4?
I'll make a motion to approve item 6.4, payment to contractors.
I'll second.
Is there a motion and a second? Are there any questions from the board? This playground has a river theme, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
And it'll be pretty special.
Yes, sir. It has the tugboat for the river, but it also has train tracks for the trains as well. So it's really cool.
Any other questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Item 6.5, payments to contractors, BG 22-155. Superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the payments to Ascendant Facilities Partners, LLC for the Guaranteed Energy Saving Contract Project. This is payment application number 5 in the amount of $730,549.90. This is direct purchase order log number 4 in the amount of $426,131.56. Is there a motion to approve these payments to contractors?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 6.5, payments to contractors for BG 22-155.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Item 6.6, payments to contractors, BG 22-297. The superintendent recommends the Paducah Board of Education approve the following payments for the Paducah Tillman artificial turf install and track resurface project. Payment application number 4 in the amount of $356,891. Direct purchase order payments in the amount of $16,555. Bacon Farmer Workman Engineering, the amount of $1,054. And JRA Architects, $1,709. Is there a motion to approve item 6.6?
I make a motion we approve item 6.6, payment to contractor, BG 22-297.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBeau?
Yes. Item 6.7, payments to contractors, BG 22-155. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the payments to contractors for the Innovation Hub, BG 17-179. As outlined below, this is the Bacon Farmer Workman Engineering for $1,873.50. Is there a motion to approve item 6.7?
I'll make a motion to approve item 6.7, payments to contractors, BG 22-155.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board?
Dr. Let me point out a typo, I'm sorry, but that 6.7 should say payment to contractors, and the BG should be 17-179. I think we copied that from 6.6.
So the
I'm
first
sorry,
part.
6.5.
Yeah, so both, where it says BG, it should say 17-179 twice.
Yes, sir, the first two numbers of the year the project initiated, so yeah, the 17 would be correct.
Gotcha.
I apologize.
I didn't get that.
So it's on 6.7, it just, they listed it here as BG 22-155. It should have said BG 17-179.
Oh, okay.
So there's been a motion to approve this BG 17-179 payment in the amount of $1,873. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Koji?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. LeBeau?
Yes. Item 6.8, donation of property. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education accept a donation from the city of Paducah, Kentucky of real property located at 420 South 13th Street, Paducah. The property is adjacent to existing district property and will be used for additional athletic facilities. Municipal order number 2638 for transfer of this property was approved at the September 13, 2022 meeting of the City Commission. Dr. Shively further recommends that the Paducah Board of Education authorize him to execute deeds and other documents necessary to facilitate transfer of this property. Is there a motion to approve item 6.8?
I make a motion we approve item 6.8, donation of property.
Is there a second from the board?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the board regarding this donation?
Yes. Is it going? How much is it going to be? Very expensive to renovate it, or just we leave it as it is?
Well, the vision for it is to create 2 practice fields. Right now, our soccer teams are practicing at Shepherd's Field, which is over beside Brooks Stadium, over here in this direction of the point. Doesn't have the restroom facilities and other amenities that we need. And so when we looked at how to move this project forward, yes, there is a cost to that. Very graciously, we have had a $500,000 donation pledged to us to move that project forward from an anonymous donor. With that, the paperwork from the wealth advisor for that donor was submitted last Friday, and so the check is going to be coming to us sometime this week or over fall break for the first payment of $250,000. Once we break ground, we expect the conditions of the agreement is another $150,000 come, and then when we hit a milestone in the project that we're going to negotiate would be these last $100,000 for that. So that should cover the project. If you go on to 6.9, the BG that's in front of you, is actually paid for out of the general fund, is how it's listed. Once we get that money in our foundation's hands, we'll do an agreement between the foundation and the Paducah Public School Board to move that to money from the foundation. And so we don't have a check in hand yet, so we don't have the agreement between the foundation and the school board. So to initiate the process with the State Department, we're starting with it out of general fund, but we will move that in October to revise it, which we do consistently on those projects. So we'll revise that BG1 funding source. At that point, that just lets us get a month ahead on the paperwork relative to the process established by the Kentucky Department of Education. So yes, we expect it to be completely paid for out of the donation.
The motion and the second to accept the donation of property and to let the superintendent execute deeds. Are there any further questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Okogie?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Next item on our agenda is 6.9, BG1 Soccer Complex. This is BG 23-152. The superintendent recommends that the Paducah Board of Education approve the BG1 document for the soccer complex project, BG 23-152, which has been provided to us under separate cover. Is there a motion from the board to approve item 6.9?
I'll make a motion we approve item 6.9, BG1 Soccer Complex, BG 23-152.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there questions from the board? Yes, sir.
Is the soccer complex supposed to give players another space to play rather than the John, or is this just a place for them to rehearse? I mean, not rehearse, but...
So it's...
I think the answer is yes. I mean, we primarily see it as a practice soccer field, but there's actually two soccer fields that we have, one the same size of Jeton, the other one's a little bit smaller based on the property. But that doesn't mean that we cannot have jamboree with two soccer games going on at Jeton, and then using the turf here at Paducah High School relative to having 3 games going on. And so we see a opportunity for our youth development with this location too, relative to inspiring stuff in the spring and in the summer, just a different location with that too. So I think the answer is yes to both questions. That's how we envision it impacting our program and improving it.
Familiar with where this property is. It's, if you're at Jeton, it's behind the bleachers. I mean, it's behind that cement wall that's back there. And I think
And the unique part of this is if you look into the Paducah Parks strategic plan, that's exactly what their vision was for that land in the future. And so we have an agreement with the city of Paducah and Paducah Public Schools where we share usage on Brooks Stadium or our gym. We just have a way we initiate that. And so we think that not only is that a huge investment for our students, we think it's a great investment in the vision that the parks had for that, and then opportunity for the city to continue to use that field just a little differently as we go forward. So it's a great partnership.
any other questions from the board? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Okogie?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes. Those are all the action items that we have on tonight's agenda. I do believe we need a motion to go into executive session regarding personnel, property, and potential litigation.
I so move.
There's a motion from the board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
If there's no further questions from the board, call the roll, please.
Dr. Okogie?
Yes.
Ms. Hancock?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Hudson?
Yes.
Dr. Levine?
Yes.